Hello and welcome. Thank you for choosing to watch our recorded session. My name is Monica Fernandez and I will be guiding you through today's webinar on AI trust. In this session, we'll be diving into the field of AI governance and Nemko's new services that can help you navigate AI governance. And although this is a recorded webinar, we encourage you to explore the additional resources linked below for further information. And if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to email us at digital@nemko.com. So, like I said, my name is Monica and I am the head of AI assurance at Nemko. I have a degree in neuroscience and a master's degree in artificial intelligence that have led me to pursue a career in the field of responsible AI. The past few years, I have been working on projects related to AI research, education, and policy. And most recently, I have worked on a project where I explored the ethical, legal, and social challenges of AI fairness for the detection and mitigation of bias. Next to me on the slide, we have Shara Marilani, who is not present right now for the recording of this webinar, but who I'm working with together building the AI trust services of Nemko. He's now the Senior Vice President and CTO of Nemko after having held various executive roles in the tech industry. And he has a PhD in management and an MBA and a bachelor's in engineering and has been through several executive and digital transformation programs. On the agenda today, we are going to touch on several topics that mostly belong to the overarching topic of AI governance and AI trust. We will talk about AI frameworks, regulations, and standards, all which aim to address the challenges that we face today. And lastly, I will give you an introduction to Nemko's AI trust services, covering our governance, risk, and compliance services, our technical assurance services, and our available AI trust collab. So we're going to start off by talking about what AI means to us today. First off, we have to quickly address the definition of artificial intelligence, because whether you're familiar with the field or not, you will encounter many definitions out there that try to cover or really define what AI really is. And especially for the field of policy and regulation, it's important to define what artificial intelligence is and what it is not. So here we have three different definitions. The first one, defined by ISO and IEC, states that artificial intelligence is a technical and scientific field devoted to the engineered systems that generates outputs such as content, forecasts, recommendations, or decisions for a given set of human-defined objectives. Next up, we have a much more broad definition from Wikipedia that states that AI, in its broadest sense, is intelligence exhibited by machines, particularly computer systems. Now, personally, as someone with a background in AI, this definition falls a little bit short to explain what AI really is. So I prefer the last definition drafted by the OECD that states that AI is a machine-based system that for explicit or implicit objectives infers from the input it receives how to generate outputs. These outputs can include predictions, content recommendations, or decisions that influence physical or virtual environments. And lastly, AI systems vary in their levels of autonomy and adaptiveness after deployment. Now, this may seem like a very long definition, but what I like about it is that it can also be broken down into segments and illustrated with a diagram to understand it even better. So I'm going to show you this. In this diagram, the OECD illustrates how an AI system looks during its building phase. So here we see that during the building phase, the system receives inputs from the environment or the context, which can be both physical or virtual. And it processes this inputs, or in other words, it uses this data to train the system in order to generate outputs that can again be used to keep training the system. During its use phase, once the system has been trained, these outputs can then influence the environment, which, like I said earlier, they can be both physical or virtual environments. Lastly, and very importantly, the definition states that different AI systems can vary in their levels of autonomy and adaptiveness after they have been deployed. Now that we have gone through the more technical concepts of AI, and for some of you, don't worry, it won't get more technical than this, we're going to jump into describing what AI can look like in practice. In our day-to-day world, we often encounter AI in the shape of discriminative AI. Now, discriminative AI are models designed to differentiate between different categories within a dataset based on the features presented to it. In this example, a discriminative AI model would analyze digital images to identify and differentiate a backpack from other objects within the image. Now, this process involves complex algorithms and neural networks. Normally, they are convolutional neural networks, or in short, CNNs, which are particularly used for image recognition tasks. In the medical field, this type of AI can be used to identify conditions from imaging data with quite high accuracy, for example, from CT scans. Like we have in this example here, we have an image of a model being used to diagnose and classify a brain tumor. As another example, we have generative AI. These models can generate new content such as text, images, or music based on patterns and information they have learned from very large data sets. ChatGPT is a pretty good example of a generative AI, which I imagine most of you are familiar with by now. But in case you didn't know, ChatGPT is based on a version of GPT architecture, which learns to predict the next word in a sentence by training on text from the internet. Once trained, ChatGPT can generate coherent and contextually relevant text based on the prompts it receives. And we have also seen that it can be used to generate code. Generative AI that can produce code has been very useful for the everyday developer, even though it can produce mistakes. And when we talk about mistakes, we should also talk about the unexpected consequences that these can bring. And I say unexpected because AI nowadays is not what it used to be. Meaning that AI has transformed since the old days. So it went from being mainly used in mechanical and physical tasks to being used in very complex roles that includes analyzing complex data and working in virtual interactions. This evolution of AI brings different risks and considerations such as privacy issues, discrimination, or transparency issues. And we normally refer to these issues as AI challenges. So, a small introduction on AI challenges. AI challenges can be subdivided into technical and ethical challenges. When we talk about technical challenges, we normally talk about performance and accuracy. When we talk about ethical challenges, however, we talk about concepts like human agency, technical robustness, safety, privacy, non-discrimination, fairness, accountability, and so on, just to name a few. These concepts are often, if not always, addressed by regulations, standards, and frameworks that try to guide the development and deployment of responsible AI. And regulations try to achieve this through the establishment of governance mechanisms, stakeholder involvement, the implementation of fines and reporting guidelines, and the implementation of risk management systems. Now, this leads us onto the topic of AI trust. AI trust is built upon pillars that are exactly the pillars that our services at Nemko can help you with. These three pillars are AI governance and ethics, AI policy and regulation, and technical safety. We can see that these pillars are addressed in the field of AI trust through frameworks, regulations, standards, technical reports, and white papers, all of which have been released and updated by important organizations, governments, and institutes around the world. Now, I would like to quickly introduce you to current AI frameworks, starting from a European standpoint. I would like to introduce you to the ethics guidelines for trustworthy AI. These guidelines were developed by the high-level expert group on AI of the European Commission. And these guidelines aim to guide developers and deployers on how to implement AI systems in a human-centric manner to make sure that AI is safe, secure, fair, and inclusive. The group selected 3 fundamental pillars that should support AI for it to be considered trustworthy. And these are that for an AI to be considered trustworthy, it should be lawful, it should be ethical, and it should be robust. And assuming that it is up to the law to define what is legal in the field of AI, the group focused on the last 2 pillars. They translated this theory into practice by defining 7 requirements that an AI should address in order to be considered trustworthy. These requirements state that AI should address human agency and oversight. It should address technical robustness and safety, moreover privacy and data governance, transparency, diversity, non-discrimination and fairness, societal and environmental well-being, and lastly, accountability. On the other side of the pond, the US is often guided by the AI risk management framework developed by NIST. This framework addresses AI risks by identifying potential harms to people, organizations, and ecosystems. And while it is voluntary, it sets baseline standards for AI risk management in regulatory actions. For example, the US Executive Order on AI, which I will talk about later. So, briefly summarized, the framework states that AI should be safe, secure and resilient, accountable and transparent, valid and reliable, explainable and interpretable, fair, and it should enhance privacy. Let's jump to AI regulations. The first one we have to talk about when talking about AI regulation is the AI Act. The AI Act is a legislative proposal by the European Union aimed at regulating the use of AI within its member states. Now, it's one of the first major regulatory frameworks that attempts to address the challenges posed by the development and deployment of AI. And as some of you may already know, it is going to be enforced very, very soon, probably within the next 2 months in either May or June. The core of the AI Act is its risk-based approach. This framework categorizes AI applications into different levels of risk, which covers unacceptable risk, high risk, low risk, and minimal risk. And depending on what kind of AI system you have to obey with certain requirements. So a prohibited AI system shall be completely prohibited. A high-risk AI system must undergo a conformity assessment. A low-risk AI system must adhere to transparency requirements and not as many requirements as a high-risk AI system. And then low-risk AI systems will barely have any obligations. The requirements for high-risk AI systems are based on the 7 requirements of trustworthy AI, actually, in such a way that they seamlessly integrate concepts like transparency, robustness, and human oversight, just to name a few. And some examples of these requirements include the need to register their systems in the EU AI database. They need to undergo a post-market monitoring where incidents are clearly reported, and they need to carry out a human rights impact assessment. And lastly, the need to keep records of the system both during development and post-deployment. Similarly, and after a lot of negotiations between the Commission, Parliament, and Council of Europe, the Act was amended to include requirements for general-purpose AI systems and models. So to address the nature and capabilities of these models and systems, general-purpose AI must comply with EU copyright law watermarking requirements, and as well as high-risk AI systems, technical documentation requirements. In the US, we have to look at the regulatory landscape on a federal level and on a state level. On a federal level, President Biden's 2023 Executive Order on AI remains the most relevant guidance, particularly as the White House announced early this February that all executive agencies have completed their 90-day actions tasked by the order. And the order calls for measures to strengthen AI safety and security, protect privacy, increase equity and civil rights, stand up for consumers and workers, and promote innovation and competition. Here you can see an example of the key AI actions tasked by the order to several agencies. You can find the longer list, a much longer list in the link below. Now at state level, there is not many, but some regulations currently in effect. In New York, we have the New York City Automated Employment Decision Tool Law. In California, we have the California Consumer Privacy Act. In Connecticut, the Act concerning AI, automated decision-making, and personal data privacy. And in Illinois, the Artificial Intelligence Video Interview Act. Although regulations isn't widely spread across states, we can see that it's developing. For example, in Utah, we see that regulation has been passed, but it's not yet in effect. Or actually, it is going to be in effect very, very soon. I think in May at this point. So in Utah, they have passed the Artificial Intelligence Policy Act, which defines certain terms. But it mainly establishes liability for the use of AI that violates consumer protection laws if it's not properly disclosed. The Act also defines other things. It creates the Office of Artificial Intelligence Policy and a Regulatory AI Analysis Program, as well as a AI Learning Laboratory Program to assess technologies, risk, and policy. And the Act also enables temporary mitigation of regulatory impacts during AI pilot testing. And lastly, it requires, states that that there must be disclosure when an individual is interacting with an AI system in a regulated occupation. So this slide is only to show that regulations all over the world are developing. And here in the next slide, we have a compilation of some regulations and policy developments in different countries. We have the United Kingdom that in 2022 they established a pro-innovation approach to governing AI. In Canada, we have the Artificial Intelligence and Data Act. In China, they are developing ethical norms for new generative AI, and in Japan, they just recently established the AI Safety Institute. I believe it was only last February. So if you want to stay updated, given that there's so much regulatory development that it's hard to keep track of, please follow our Nemko AI Trust page, where we're trying to make regular posts about the latest regulatory developments regarding AI. Moving forward, we can all talk about regulations without talking about standards. Here we can see that there are available international standards addressing different aspects of AI, such as AI bias, computational approaches, or terminology. These standards are important as we often see them involved in current developing regulation. For example, the AI Act. The AI Act states in Article 16 that providers of high-risk AI systems shall have a quality management system in place. And complementary to this, we see that the ISO IEC 42001 that was just released in December last year provides the requirements to do exactly this. They guide on how to establish, maintain, and improve an AI management system within the context of an organization. Now, Hopefully, after introducing the past few slides, you can now see how these pillars that we talked about earlier are the key themes that we encounter across guidelines, regulations, and standards related to AI trust. Thus, this is why we have developed Nemko's AI trust services around them. So now I'm going to briefly introduce you to the specifics of Nemko's AI trust services. With Nemko AI Trust, we want to help companies and organizations with two things. First, we want to help them evaluate the process. And second, we want to help them evaluate the tech. We help you organizations, companies evaluate the process through advisory services that help you implement governance, risk, and compliance measures. We do this whilst taking into account global regulations, standards, and frameworks like the ones I mentioned in this webinar. And on the other hand, in parallel, we can also help you evaluate the tech, where we can provide technical assurance services to help you look into different phases of the AI lifecycle, including validation, monitoring, and deployment of your systems or models. So overall, we can help you with navigating regulations and standards, creating an AI inventory, performing a regulations impact assessment, look into AI policy and AI governance, perform market access assessments, help you with reporting and creating model cards and registering your AI systems wherever they have to be registered, and performing different kinds of model evaluations. Now, our model evaluation capabilities covers a wide range of areas like regulatory compliance, fairness, accountability, and transparency. But more specifically, we can also perform detailed evaluations and analysis related to bias, explainability, and reliability in both machine learning models and large language models. Lastly, we have the AI Trust Collab. We have built this environment to allow our customers gain access to important information needed in the field of AI trust. As you can see here at the top, we have a tab called AI Assurance that contains a lot of knowledge content on the topics, providing detailed information on AI ethics, and the AI regulatory landscape in the EU and US for now. And next to it, we have a library that is filled with a list of regulation standards and audit catalogs, as well as a glossary of all the terminology used in the field. Here we see an example of the regulatory library, where we try to cover all countries around the world and guide on whether these regulations are enforced, whether they're currently only at the proposal stage, or whether they are simply policy guidelines. Then we have a list of international standards, where we provide not just the type of standard and the publishing status, but also the audience that it is relevant to, as well as the AI aspects they tend to cover. So some of them may cover only robustness and safety, some of them may only cover privacy, and as you can see here, a lot of them cover all aspects of AI. And here we have a snapshot of our glossary that aims to gather AI terminology gathered from trustworthy sources, such as the official EU and US websites or regulations like the EU AI Act. And that is about it. Thank you for listening and staying throughout this recording. If you want to learn more about our services and topics on AI trust, please go to nemko.com/AI trust and follow our Nemko AI Trust LinkedIn page. Thank you very much and have a great day. Please email us for any questions if you have any questions after watching this recording, and we will answer it as soon as possible. Okay.